Thank you, Mr Speaker. On indulgence, yesterday evening the ADF lost one of its finest. Warrant Officer Lachlan Muddle died in a parachuting accident at the ADF's parachute school at Jervis Bay. Warrant Officer Muddle was involved in a mid-air collision with another parachutist, which resulted in his death. The other parachutist received minor injuries. Both of them were deeply experienced parachutists. They'd both done in excess of thousands of jumps, and they were participating in a 6-week-long advanced parachuting training block. As a result of last night's accident, for the moment, parachuting in the ADF has been paused. Lachlan Muddle joined the Australian Army in 1994. He was a member of the Special Air Service Regiment, the SAS, and he qualified for the SAS in 2007. He was deployed on 5 separate occasions, including to Afghanistan. He was an expert sniper. He was a seriously experienced Special Forces soldier. He's remembered for his sense of humour and for his commitment to service. As a result of last night's accident, a series of investigations will now take place, both within the Defence Force and beyond. It's really important that they are as thorough as possible so that every necessary lesson is learnt here. But let me say that the Defence Force trains as it fights, and necessarily there is risk in Defence Force training. And so Lachlan Muddle's sacrifice is every bit as meaningful and significant as those we have lost on the battlefield. This afternoon, our thoughts are very much with Lachlan Muddle's family and with his defence family, the SAS, who I know will be feeling his loss acutely.
Indulgence, the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for Defence for his words. Once again, we're reminded ever so cruelly about the costs of serving one's country. Once again, we're reminded ever so cruelly about the risks warfighters take on in their jobs. With the tragic death of Warrant Officer Second Class Lachlan Muddle last night in the parachuting exercise we just heard about, Australia has lost an honourable man, a patriot. Our hearts break for those closest to him. His family has lost a loved one. Friends have lost a mate, and the Special Air Service Regiment has lost a brother in arms. We acknowledge their loss and their grief as we mourn our nation's loss of such a fine Australian. To every generation, our nation asks, who among you will keep Australians safe? And at every March Out parade, we find those who, despite the dangers, have answered, I will. To echo the profound and timeless words spoken almost 2,500 years ago, the man who can most truly be accounted brave is he who best knows the meaning of what is sweet in life and of what is terrible, and then goes out undeterred to meet what is to come. We honour Lachlan's service and the service of every member of the Australian Defence Force. Our thoughts are with Lachlan's family, friends, members of the SAS and the wider defence community.
It's a mark of respect to the memory of Warrant Officer Lachlan Muddle. I ask all to rise in their places. I thank the House. I also inform the House, sadly, of the deaths of Patricia Trish Margaret Crossan AM, Kay Janet Denman and William Bill Leonard Graydon AM, former senators and a member of this House. Trish Crossan died on the 13th of April 2016. She represented the Northern Territory from 1998 to 2013. Kay Denman died on the 20th of April 2026. She represented the state of Tasmania from 1993 to 2005. Bill Graydon died on the 28th of April 2026. He represented the division of Swan from 1949 to 1954. As a mark of respect to the memory of the deceased, I invite all present to rise from their places. I thank the House. Call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I move that the House record its deep regret at the death on 26 April 2026 of the Honourable Peter Frederick Morris OAM, a former Minister and Member of the House for the Division of Shortland from 1972 to 1998, place on record its appreciation of his long and meritorious public service and tender its profound sympathy to his family in their bereavement. Mr Speaker, since the passing of Peter Morris, it has been touching to read some of the tributes from those who were children in Shortland when he was their local member. Memories of Peter helping them out with booklets explaining the workings of Parliament. Memories of Peter pinning badges onto freshly appointed school captains, and tellingly, memories of how their own parents spoke of him. A gentleman, always engaged and ready to talk with anyone. For a quarter of a century from the moment he was swept into Parliament in the Whitlam victory of 1972, Peter represented the people of Shortland with dedication, decency, integrity and respect. Above all, he worked to make a difference. During his time in that powerhouse that was the Hawke Ministry, he held the portfolios of aviation, resources, transport and communication support, industrial relations, and most significantly for him, I think, transport. In this role, he oversaw the upgrade of some 16,000 kilometres of national highway. He reduced the Australian National Railways operating expenses by 50%. He reformed the road freight industry. He brought then Commonwealth-owned shipping line into profit for the first time in over a decade. And when he eventually headed to the backbench, he showed how an elected member could keep making a real difference. As chair of the House Standing Committee on Transport, Communication and Infrastructure, he delivered Ships of Shame, the committee's seminal report into dangerous shipping practices. Peter's preface to the report opens with a masterclass in how to get straight to the heart of a matter. And I quote, "This report is about a minority of ships, bad ships, ships that endanger the lives of those who serve on them, ships that are the source of major risks to the marine environment and marine facilities of the nations they visit, ships on which seafarers are abused and exploited by officers and management alike, ships that well deserve to be known as ships of shame." Years later, when I had the privilege of serving as Transport Minister, I was blessed to have Peter as a source of sound and constructive advice on shipping, aviation, regulatory reform and regional economic development. He was generous with his time and with his wisdom. It's also worth noting, in a country with such a significant and celebrated Greek presence, that Peter was the first Australian of Greek heritage to become a government minister. His father, Jimmy Morris, was a migrant from the island of Simi, anglicising his name from Agapitos Montiadis and running a cafe in Newcastle. It was a heritage that Peter proudly carried, along with the spirit of hard work and aspiration with which his father had put down roots in his chosen land. Peter's life was long and full, seized in all its opportunity and possibility by a man of compassion, empathy and humanity. A man guided at every step of the way by his Labor values. A man who wanted to make a difference for Shortland, for the Hunter and for Australians right across the continent and on the seas beyond. He was a great Novocastrian who gave our movement heart. Now our hearts go out to his family, to all who loved him and to all whose lives were touched by his. And may Peter Morris rest in peace.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Prime Minister for his heartfelt words, and I join him in honouring the life of Peter Frederick Morris OAM. The son of a Greek immigrant who Hurd ran a local cafe in Newcastle. Peter came from modest beginnings, but his achievement as a Transport Minister was not modest at all. It was of great consequence. Before entering public life, Peter managed his family's wholesale and retail food businesses, and he served as an alderman on Newcastle City Council. He rode into Canberra on the its time Whitlam government wave in 1972. But his success was self-made, a man who was re-elected 10 times by the people of Shortland. After the dismissal election of 1975, Labor's move into opposition ended up being career-defining for Peter. He was appointed as spokesperson on transport, and when Bob Hawke brought Labor back into power, Peter became the Minister for both Transport and Aviation. In these roles, he helped to build the nation. Under Peter's watch, 16,000 kilometres of national highway were upgraded, and he opened the M1 motorway between Newcastle and Sydney. He secured the original funding for what is now Western Sydney Airport at Badgerys Creek in my own electorate. And he was instrumental in the establishment of Newcastle Airport for the town he absolutely loved. Bob Hawke saw Peter as a quiet achiever, a man who got things done. And under the Hawke government, Peter served in numerous other portfolios, including resources and industrial relations. His sense of service stayed with him when he returned to the backbench, and as we've just heard, in 1992 as a committee chair, he delivered the Ships of Shame report. Retiring after 25 years of service, he was appointed to the International Commission on Shipping. In 1998, the year of Peter's exit from politics, the then Liberal member for Corangamite sang Peter's praises on the floor of the Parliament. He said of Peter, his knowledge of transport matters was second to none. He was regarded by his peers in the transport area in Australia as being the most knowledgeable person in that area. Testimony to his service to the Parliament and the maritime industry, he was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia in 2012. So on behalf of the Coalition, I express my condolences to Peter's sons, Michael, Paul and John, to his wider family and to his many friends, especially in our great Greek community and in the Labor Party. May Peter Frederick Morris rest in peace.
Call to the Minister for Defence Industry and the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Speaker, Peter Morris wasn't the tallest of blokes, but he was a giant of the Labor movement, and he made an enormous contribution to public life. As we've already heard, he was a staunch advocate for the people of Shortland and a proud hunter champion. Peter was also a generous mentor to myself, my predecessor Jill Hall, and so many others. Peter came to federal politics in the Whitlam wave of '72. It was a time of great change, and he witnessed some great moments in parliamentary history. He was there some 5 feet behind Prime Minister Whitlam on the steps of Old Parliament House during the dismissal speech. And he spoke publicly about what he described as the abandonment of customs, practice and convention. He brought with him to this place a deeply held commitment to fairness, decency and determination to make government work for ordinary Australians. And as we've just heard, he's well known for his achievements in the transport portfolio. He oversaw record investments in the national highway system, introduced legislation to reform the interstate trucking industry, revitalised the railways and opened up commercial aviation by terminating the 2-airline agreement. He also advocated for Western Sydney Airport and, as the opposition leader listed, secured funding to purchase the land around the site. Locally, Peter transformed air services for the Hunter. Newcastle Airport would not exist without Peter Morris's leadership and vision. But Speaker, for Peter, these projects weren't just about trucks, trains and planes. They were about the people. In 1986, he became the first Transport Minister to drive the full length of the Bruce Highway, 1,700 kilometres along the Bruce Highway from Brisbane to Cairns. And he said, and I quote, Good roads are more than just about a strip of bitumen. They bring tourists, help industry and create jobs. His projects certainly did. Beyond transport, he's best known for his work to improve the lives of seafarers. The Ships of Shame report shone a light on the appalling conditions endured by seafarers on international shipping routes. It highlighted abuse and exploitation by both officers and management. The report concluded that modern slavery was rife. This work didn't just change policy, it changed lives and led to legislation that improved conditions for seafarers in Australian waters. Peter had a very broad experience serving in multiple ministries, including resources, housing and aged care, transport and communication services and industrial relations. In fact, he quipped that since, and I quote, "we get a Bible each time we get sworn in, that I've got the best Bible collection in Parliament House." And this broad contribution to Parliament was recognised with an Order of Australia Medal in 2012. But Speaker, above all else, he was a tireless advocate for the people of Shortland. But his pathway to Parliament was not simple. After serving as a Newcastle Alderman, Peter stood for pre-selection in the seat of Shortland. And this pre-selection would go down in history as the longest pre-selection in the history of the Australian Labor Party. It involved 3 separate ballots over 2 years and one of the earliest interventions of the federal executive to deal with, let's just say, dubious ballot practices. It even featured in an ABC This Day Tonight expose, not the last time a controversial Labor Party pre-selection was of interest to the media. Throughout this process, Peter and his supporters fought against the full force of the then brutal Sussex Street machine, intent on having their way. They're now changed, I'm told. And importantly, Peter won. And after he retired from Parliament, he continued to make significant contributions, including as chair of the International Commission on Shipping and as president of the Newcastle Maritime Museum. And as the PM said, he was a source of sound and constructive advice to the PM when he was Transport Minister. Fittingly, Peter's passion and commitment to the Labor Party never wavered. He was secretary of the mighty Charlestown branch of the party up until 2015. Imagine that, a former cabinet minister, still secretary of his local Labor Party branch 17 years after leaving Parliament. He was active on the Shortland Federal Electorate Council for 48 years, only finishing up in 2019. Peter was generous with his advice and wisdom for both myself and Jill Hall. At one stage, I had 2 former members of Shortland on the FEC with a combined 44 years of experience to draw upon. But most importantly, Speaker, Peter lived an extraordinary life. He was one of 8 children and went to Lake Memora Public School, a one-teacher, one-room school with 15 students. His dad was a Greek immigrant, and when he arrived in Australia, he anglicised his name to Morris and ran a fish and chip shop on Hunter Street in Newcastle. His dad would live in Newcastle during the week, running the shop and returning home on weekends, and when Peter went to Newcastle Boys High School, he'd stay with him. A generation later, as the PM said, Peter became our first Greek Australian minister. Speaker, the fact that both Peter and his brother Alan became federal members of Parliament, and his son, the late and much lamented Matthew Morris, the member for Charlestown, is a wonderful Australian success story and a tribute to the contribution that Greek Australians make to our community, our institutions and our democracy. I offer my sincere condolences to Peter's family and friends. He leaves an incredible legacy of service to the Parliament and the community, and he will be deeply missed by the many, many people whose lives he touched, including my own. Rest in peace, Peter.
And as a mark of respect to the memory of the Honourable Peter Frederick Morris, I ask all present to rise in their places. I thank the House. I call the Leader of the House.
Speaker, I move that the debate be adjourned.
The question is the debate to be adjourned and the resumption of the debate be made an order of the day for the next sitting. I'll put the question. Those opinions say aye. Against no. I think the ayes have it. I give the call to the Leader of the House.
Speaker, I declare that the resumption of debate on the Prime Minister's motion of condolence in connection with the death of the Honourable Peter Frederick Morris is referred to the Federation Chamber.
Arrangements, I call the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I inform the House that the Treasurer will be absent from question time today. I will answer questions on his behalf.
We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has said, quote, "My word is my bond. I've always been a man of my word, And I believe that when you go to an election and you make commitments, you should stick to them. Yet reports in all major newspapers confirm that the government is about to impose new taxes on housing, savings, small businesses and farmers. Why should Australians ever trust another commitment this Labor government makes?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question, and indeed in May last year we did promise to cut income taxes for every taxpayer this year and next, and tonight's budget will confirm indeed that we're cutting taxes this year and next. We promised a $1,000 instant tax deduction, and tonight's budget will fulfil that, helping low and middle income earners. We promised to strengthen Medicare, and tonight's budget will provide an additional $25 billion for hospitals. It will provide for support for urgent care clinics to be made permanent, a part of Medicare. It will provide for the cheaper medicines. It will provide the funding for the endo clinics that are up and running, assisting with women's health. It will provide support for Medicare mental health clinics as well. We also committed to improve aged care, giving Australians dignity and security in later years, in contrast with what we inherited, which was summed up in one word of neglect. And tonight's budget will provide additional funding for aged care as well. Our commitment, of course, was also to make the economy more resilient through our Future Made in Australia plan. And tonight's budget will do that. Will do that as well. Now, the budget will also show that we've halved the fuel excise, something that we didn't say we would do before the election, but something that we've done in response to the circumstances which are there.
And Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives. Order.
I think the joke was on you on Saturday. On Saturday. And it went well for you. And it went well for you.
Order. Members on my left, the member for Parkes, the member for Cowper, we're just going to take the temperature down. Prime Minister is answering the question. He was asked a question. He's giving information to the House. I'd like to hear what he'd like to say. Prime Minister will
Mr. Speaker, the worse they're going, the louder they get. That is something that we know is the case. Now, tonight's budget will deliver reform, will deliver resilience, will be the budget that Australia needs in 2026. We have been working through the global fuel crisis that has been imposed on us, and we've been working on that, delivering for Australians, and tonight's budget will do just that again.
The call to the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Prime Minister. As the conflict in the Middle East continues to disrupt global fuel supplies, how is the Albanese Labor government taking action to shield Australians from the worst of the crisis and bolster our national fuel security and supply?
Give a call to the Honourable the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for her question, and indeed from the outset of February 28, we said that the longer that the war goes on, the more serious the economic impact will be. We've continued to call for a de-escalation. We want to see peace in the region. We want to see the Strait of Hormuz opened up to normal traffic. We can see, though, that that is having an impact here at home, even though this is a war in which Australia is not a protagonist. But we are shielding Australians from the worst. And so far, we have made a positive difference. The fuel excise cut is easing pressure, and the release of some fuel reserves has helped distribution, especially in the regions. We're constantly engaging with our trading partners in the region. I travelled to Malaysia, to Brunei and Singapore. Minister Wong has travelled to Japan, Korea and China. I've hosted the Prime Minister of Japan and spoke with Premier Li of China. This is all making a difference, something that was actually criticised by those opposite. Through Export Finance Australia, extra cargoes of shiploads of fuel and fertiliser, hundreds of millions of litres of diesel are coming to Australia. And that shows why our reputation internationally as a stable, reliable partner is really important for us. And tonight's budget will focus on making Australia's economy even more resilient as we go forward. Central to that will be our $10 billion Australian fuel security and resilience package. A government-owned fuel reserve of 1 billion litres, the first since World War II, lifting our national fuel reserves to 50 days, establishing a fuel and fertiliser security facility, increasing supply and storage, getting Australia through this crisis, but doing it in a way, Mr Speaker, so that we're stronger on the other side of it. That is our aim. Now, we do live in very turbulent times. There is a great deal of uncertainty about when this conflict will end, about what the impact will be. All we can do is to put in place every measure at our disposal to protect Australia's national interests. That's what I've been doing. That's what the Minister for Energy has been doing. That's what the Minister for Trade, who has responsibility for EFA, has been doing as well. And it is making a positive difference. The fact that there is more fuel in Australia today than there was on February 28 says that we have got these measures right, but of course we're not through what is a global crisis going forward.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said, quote, for the 50th time, that he would not impose new taxes on Australian homes and savings. All major newspapers report that the Prime Minister is about to do the exact opposite. Why should Australians ever trust another commitment this Labor government makes?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Well, our budget tonight will build on everything that Australia is doing to shield Australia from the worst of the global fuel crisis, but also to ensure that we come out the other side a stronger, fairer and more resilient economy. Now, our budget will be true to Labor values and Australian values, fairness and aspiration as we go forward. Those opposite, the Leader of the Opposition raises the issue of housing taxes, and of course there was a committee report commissioned indeed by the Greens, the Liberals and the Nationals in the Senate, who asked for there to be a full public inquiry into capital gains taxation. That is something that was initiated by those opposite and something that we voted against, Mr Speaker, something that we voted against. And indeed so many of those opposite have said, including the member for Canning, had to say, I'm asked about quotes. If that includes negative gearing, then we should make changes. That was the member for Canning. The Shadow Treasurer said it's time to be honest.
Order.
The tax system is screwing over young Australians. It's screwing over.
Order. Order. Members on my right. The manager on a point of order.
Thanks, Speaker. And Standing Order 104 says this: an answer must be directly relevant to the question. The question was, just to remind you, why should Australian...
So when you are... Order, I'll just deal with this. I'll hear from the Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives.
Point of order, Speaker. Have I got the call?
I just said I will.
The Prime Minister's standing there. I'm just not sure if I got the call.
Yeah. What?
No, my point of order.
What's your point of order?
My point of order is, Mr. Speaker, as the Leader of Opposition Business was making his point of order, his microphone was turned off before you called to order.
Yeah, I did.
And
I did.
And the Prime Minister had already stood to his feet before you...
I did. And I have the power to do that, but the House has given me that power because, I have been crystal clear about taking points of order. That is not the time to then restate the question. It's not the time to restate the question. You raised the point of order on relevance, which the manager did. So that's not an opportunity to have a second go, a third go, and then we're getting into those bad habits. And I'm starting this you've raised your point of order. So the question was about should Australians ever trust another commitment of government? I think everyone could agree that it's a pretty broad question. So you're going to get a broad answer. Yeah? Further to the point of order. I haven't finished, but I'll listen out of respect.
Further to the point of order, it says that Labor governments make, not what the opposition is doing, it's what Labor government makes. And that's the point I was trying to point out to the Prime Minister.
Yeah. I thank the manager. The relevance here is that it is a broad question that you've asked about policy. Just Leader of the Opposition, if we're going to just have broad questions about trust and, policy announcements, you're going to get a broad answer. If it was about a fact or a figure or a yes or a no, sure. So the Prime Minister will continue.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. The Shadow Treasurer had this to say: it's time to be honest, the tax system is screwing over young Australians. Instead, it favours well-off, established interests against those trying to get ahead. In short, if we work hard to get ahead, you get hit hard. If you live off assets, you don't. And it's not just ancient history, Mr Speaker. The member for Groom said this: I think there are some real issues we need to address. I'm open to a discussion on CGT. The former member for Menzies said this: housing supply matters most. Listen to the former member for Menzies, because he's not here anymore. He's not here anymore, so he can't speak for himself. But I can speak on his behalf. Because he said this: housing supply matters most, but supply alone will not solve the problem. Current tax settings tilt incentives toward investors, particularly in existing stock. They reward bidding rather than building. The Liberal Party should lead with this: cap negative gearing for established dwellings at one property per investor, while allowing the deduction for up to 5 newly constructed homes. Mr Speaker, those opposite had a committee to look at these issues. Australians will see a budget tonight that acts in their interests.
Give the call to the honourable member for Bonner.
My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How has the Albanese Labor government acted to secure additional fuel for Australia? What actions will the government take in this budget to ensure we are better placed for any future uncertainty?
The call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for her question, and more importantly, thank her for the representation she gives to the workers of the Lytton refinery in her electorate, which she's very proud of and we're very proud of too. And, Mr Speaker, the situation in the Middle East has led to what the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency has said is an impact on world energy supply as big as all the 1970s energy shocks and the Ukraine war combined, and worse than that, all put together. And that, of course, has had an impact right around the world, including in Australia. And in fact, Mr Speaker, in Australia we've also dealt with a very badly timed fire at the Geelong refinery. We're very pleased no one was hurt, but there's no doubt it came at the worst time possible. But despite all that, Mr Speaker, I am in a position to tell the House that Australia has more fuel today than we did on the 28th of February here in our country, Mr Speaker. We have 42 days worth of petrol, 35 days worth of diesel and 29 days worth of jet fuel. Now, Mr Speaker, that is more petrol and diesel than on the 28th of February, and in fact, in relation to diesel, it is the second highest result we have had since the minimum stock obligation came into force in 2023. Now, Mr Speaker, that is a result of government and industry working together. It's a result of the Prime Minister working with our Southeast Asian trading partners so closely and ensuring that those trading relationships and our foreign affairs relationships are in good working order, and ensuring that our friends and trading partners are aware of the importance for Australia. It's a result of decisions the government's made in relation to sulphur and the flashpoint of diesel and so much more, Mr Speaker. But also, the honourable member asked me what further steps we will take, because the government has been focused on the short term, ensuring that fuel supply, but also importantly, building our resilience for the future, because these international shocks are likely to get more frequent, not less, Mr Speaker. That's the international environment in which we work. And as a result, the Albanese government's made a decision to build a government-owned strategic reserve. It comes at considerable cost, Mr Speaker. It comes at considerable cost, but it's an investment worthwhile. 1 billion litres, Mr Speaker, owned by the government, kept in reserve, to be used and deployed to areas of regional shortage when that emerges, as it can often do, and as we saw in the early days of this situation, Mr Speaker. That is building for the future. That is using the government for good purpose, Mr Speaker. The private sector holdings are important, and we've increased the obligation on them as well, but that alone is not enough. 22 out of the 32 International Energy Agency governments hold a strategic reserve. Until today, that has not been the case for Australia. That changes tonight as the Albanese government ensures that the Australian people will own a fuel reserve to be used for the Australian people at the behest of the government for the best interests of the Australian people.
Call to the honourable member for Calare.
To the Prime Minister. The Great Western Highway at Victoria Pass has now been closed for 2 months. Our businesses are desperate. They're going broke because of the negligence of successive governments. It's a debacle, and the response by state and federal governments has not been good enough. You announced plans for a tunnel under Victoria Pass in 2010. Will you now put some serious money down for a business support package and also a high-speed road access to the Central West?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Redevelopment and Local Government.
Thanks very much, and I thank the member for Calare. I know that his community is highly concerned about this, and I respect that that's the spirit in which you've raised it. As you're aware, the Great Western Highway does remain closed at Mitchell's Causeway following what has been a major geotechnical failure. I remain in contact with Minister Aitchinson's office, the New South Wales Roads Minister, and I continue to seek the latest update about the situation. I continue to be advised by the New South Wales Government that the road is simply not safe and cannot reopen until it is so. There can't be any shortcuts on that. The New South Wales Road Minister has made it clear there is currently no firm timetable for reopening, with the closure expected to extend beyond the 3-month estimate that was originally given. It does reflect the seriousness and the complexity of the failure and the need to get the solution right. Significant cracking and movement have been detected in the substructure of the Mitchell's Causeway, and detailed geotechnical investigations have confirmed that the underlying fill has deteriorated, creating voids and instability within that structure. Transport for New South Wales has now completed extensive testing and is now moving into the next phase, working with industry to identify and finalise an engineering solution to safely reopen the road. A competitive process is underway with multiple engineering proposals shortlisted and a final solution expected to be selected shortly. We don't underestimate that this is a very serious situation, and it is not a quick or simple fix. The work required will involve substantial reconstruction to modern standards. There's a number of actions the New South Wales Government has already taken in response to the closure, as you're aware, establishing the Great Western Highway Community Coordination Task Force, delivering extra public transport services to support connectivity, boosting maintenance and resilience works on key detour routes including Bell's Line of Road, Darling Causeway and Chifley Road, committing $50 million to strengthen and upgrade all of the detour routes as well, and Transport for New South Wales continues to engage. The Commonwealth...
The Minister will just pause for a moment. I'll hear from the member for Calare on the point of order.
I'd be grateful, Mr Speaker, if the answer could address the questions which were raised. It's relevant.
the issue on relevance, the Minister was asked some specific questions as part of the broad issue, so I'm listening carefully to make sure she's updating the House on actions taken by both governments, but I'll listen carefully.
The Commonwealth will continue to engage with New South Wales, and we have made it very clear that we stand ready if New South Wales does have a request for funding to assist, that we will consider that very seriously. But let's be really clear about this. When we came to office, there was $2 billion allocated for works along the Great Western Highway for either end, with some idea, no funding, no planning, that there would be an 11-kilometre tunnel dug underneath the Blue Mountains. Now, nobody was serious about that. So there was no solution. It was a false promise, again, given pretty often by those opposite. We'll do the work to try and get this road open as soon as possible, and I'll update you when we've got news about that.
We'll give the call to the honourable member for Spence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese government delivering historic investments in our Defence Force?
We call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, can I thank the member for his question and acknowledge his service in the Australian Army. 4 weeks ago, the government released the National Defence Strategy 2026 and the accompanying update of the Integrated Investment Program, Defence's 10-year procurement plan. In 2023, the Defence Strategic Review recommended doing away with the old system of intermittent haphazard defence white papers, replacing it with a consistent 2-yearly drumbeat of updated strategy and procurement. And NDS 26 is the second iteration of this, and as a result, the Defence Force now operates against contemporary strategy and refreshed procurement plans. NDS 26 observed that over the last 2 years, the world has become a much more difficult place, and I think we can all see that, not just in the war in the Middle East, in ongoing conflict in Ukraine and other parts of the world, but continued great power contest, China's continued massive military build-up, and the global rules-based order being placed under acute pressure. As a result, NDS 26 provided for yet another significant major increase in the defence spend. $14.5 billion over the forward estimates, $53 billion over the decade, and this will be reflected in tonight's budget. And what that means is that since coming to office, the Albanese government has increased defence spending over the next 4 years by $30 billion relative to what we inherited, and $117 billion over the decade. 2 years ago, we reprioritised $70 billion of defence spending. This time, we reprioritised just $10 billion, and I think that reflects a continuity since 2023 in the type of defence force which we are seeking to build, one that can fundamentally project. But what has changed over the last 2 years is the rise of autonomous systems, the rise of drones. And so NDS has a provision of $12 to $15 billion over the next decade to ensure that we are investing in this critical capability such that it is at the heart of our modern defence force. NDS 26 is another step that the Albanese government has taken in building up a much more capable defence force which, in a troubled world, can keep Australia safe.
Call to the Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Before the last election, the Prime Minister promised Australians he would not impose any new taxes on farmers and small businesses. The Prime Minister has said, and I quote, "I'm a Prime Minister who, when I make a commitment and when I say I'll do something, I do it." And I think the Australian people understand that. Prime Minister, why should Australians ever trust another commitment this Labor government makes?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'm asked about tax policy. and about whether changes should be made to tax policy. And indeed, I'm not sure of all their titles, whatever the title is of the member of the National Party opposite, the member for Gippsland, is that his party was a part of having the review that was called for and voted for and conducted by the Senate, along with their partners in the sometimes partners in the Liberal Party and also the Greens political party.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition.
And indeed, one of their senators opposite as well, Senator Kovacic, said this: we should not be afraid to consider tax changes, whether they be capping the number of properties that can be negatively geared. A serious plan by this parliament has to deal with the housing crisis and would go a long way to restoring the electorate's faith in political leadership, solving big problems and delivering reform. That is what they had to say. Now, until 1985, of course,
Order.
there was...
The Prime Minister will pause. He's concluded his answer. We'll move to the next question. Give a call to the member for Bullwinkle. Order. Order. Members on my left, we're going to regain order in the House. So the member for Bullwinkle will be shown some courtesy, and I'll now hear her question.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. How is the Albanese Labor government helping our farmers, fishers and producers to manage the impacts and of the conflict in the Middle East and to keep our food production strong? And further, what has been the responses to these measures?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank our terrific member for Bullwinkle. It was terrific to be with her in WA's wheat belt, talking to farmers on the ground about how they're actually dealing with what is a global conflict and how it's impacting them on the ground, particularly in relation to fuel and fertiliser. Availability and price, of course, was concerning them in the conversations that we had. And we do know that the impacts of this war are being felt globally, right here in Australia as well, which is why, of course, I've been holding weekly roundtables with the agriculture industry, and why we have been working as a government day and night, as you've heard from the Prime Minister and the Minister for Energy, to help Australians, but particularly also our farmers, manage these impacts and to keep Australia moving. Because we recognise the critical role of our farmers, our fishers and our producers play in supporting our food security, our economy and our regional communities. We've been focused on easing the immediate pressures and securing more fuel and fertiliser to provide farmers with confidence for the future, Mr Speaker. We've amended fuel and diesel standards. We've released 20% of our strategic fuel stockpile to help get more fuel into our regions and to our farmers and our fishers. We, of course, have passed the legislation to underwrite additional shipments of fuel and fertiliser, with over 450 million litres of additional diesel secured to date. We've worked with industry and with the Indonesian government to help secure an additional 250,000 tonnes of urea supply from Indonesia, with the President of Incitec Pivot, Scott Bauman, saying, and I quote, "This additional volume will go a long way to shoring up critical supplies for Australian farmers," Mr Speaker. We're streamlining, but we're not compromising on our biosecurity processes to help get fertiliser and feed inputs to our farmers faster. We're also deferring the implementation of changes to agricultural export services for an additional year. And of course, we've made our announcement in relation to tonight's budget, which will include an Australian fuel security and resilience package. This includes $7.5 billion for the establishment of a fuel and fertiliser security facility to increase supply and storage of fuel and fertiliser right here in Australia, as we've heard. And over $3 billion to establish a government-owned Australian fuel security reserve of around 1 billion litres. This is about doing more in our own backyard. It's about minimising the impacts of global disruptions, and it's about keeping our food production system strong. These are critical investments that have been welcomed right across the agriculture industry, including by the President of the National Farmers Federation, Hamish McIntyre, who said last week, and I quote, "It is a welcome step toward building the sovereign capability we need to protect our food system." Mr Speaker, while those opposite are focused on whether or not they should do a deal with one nation, we're focused on deals for the nation.
Call to the Order. Give the call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition in the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister told Australians, quote, "I'm a Prime Minister who will promise to do things and then go and do them. I think that's how you restore faith in politics." End quote. Given reports in all major newspapers that the Prime Minister is about to impose new taxes on small businesses, when did the Prime Minister promise these changes?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I'm asked about taxation policy and when it comes to investment and when commitments are made from someone who's made a commitment to stand by his leader, but who undermines him at every single opportunity. That's right. And
that is right.
When it comes,
Prime Minister will pause, and we'll hear from members on my right. We'll hear the Prime Minister is about 20 seconds in, but we'll hear from the. The Prime Minister's concluded his answer. We'll move to the next question. Give the call. This is the leader. The manager is seeking leave to table a document.
I seek leave to table a document, the Labor Party talking points from this morning saying, have you broken a promise? Right, I'd like to table them.
It's coaching. Good call to the order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the Honourable Member for Patterson.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Resources. How's the Albanese Labor government securing affordable gas for Australian households and businesses? And are there any alternative approaches, Minister?
The call to the Minister for Northern Australia and the Minister for Resources.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for her question. As Chair of the Standing Committee on Primary Industry, she knows more than anyone the importance of gas in Australian manufacturing, and that Labor is the true party of the Australian resources sector. Mr Speaker, as you know, as we all know, gas is a vital Australian resource and it should work for all Australians. It should work for households, for businesses, for our manufacturing industry, and really importantly, to firm renewable energy sources. That is why this Albanese Labor government will implement a 20% domestic gas reservation scheme. This government will ensure that Australians get more of the gas that we produce here and at an affordable price. We will implement this domestic gas reservation in a responsible way. We have been very clear that existing export contracts will be respected. Australia takes very seriously its role in supporting regional energy security. We will remain a reliable energy partner for our region, including for our friends and partners in Japan, the Republic of Korea, Singapore and other partners as well. Implementing a domestic gas reservation scheme is a major structural reform. It will mean more Australian gas is made available for Australian households, Australian manufacturers and Australian industry. It will drive a wedge between the domestic gas prices and high international gas prices. And really, very importantly, Mr Speaker, it will shield Australian gas users from the volatility we see in global markets. I am asked about alternative approaches. Now, one approach we have seen that was actually delivered by those opposite was to deliver to the Australian people a gas price of $31 a gigajoule as they were leaving office, and they even hid that at the time. Today that price is under $10. Those opposite had a decade to act on gas supply and prices and did absolutely nothing. They negligently left the Australian domestic gas security mechanism to expire, leaving us to urgently fix it in 2022. Those opposite voted against lower gas prices. They voted against the Gas Market Code of Conduct, which secured new gas for more Australians and more enough gas to power the state of Queensland for 2 years. Another approach they had was to cut government departments, slow down approvals processes for new projects. Those opposite also voted against energy price relief for all Australians. Just like they voted against tax cuts for all taxpayers, they voted against the price cap on Australian gas for Australian people. And if the last budget is anything to go at, the last budget and reply speech is anything to go on, we expect the Coalition to still be drafting their gas policy down the corridor. While we are reserving gas, Mr Speaker, they are just all so much hot air.
Concluded. The call to the order, the member for Lyne. We will wait when the House comes to order so I can hear from the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said his word is his bond. Will the Prime Minister raise taxes on houses, savings, small businesses and farmers?
Give a call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question. I encourage him to turn up here at 7:30 and to hear the budget speech, because what budget speeches do is they outline the direction that a government wants to do, and then on Thursday night we'll get to see maybe the direction that the opposition want to do.
His predecessor,
but he has, of course, he has the opportunity to give a budget reply, unlike the former member for Farrer, who was not allowed the opportunity to even last to give one budget reply. Not one. And who they sat down, the boys, and plotted prior to a funeral of one of their former colleagues on how they would replace the member for Farrer. Now, when it comes to budgets also and taxation measures, there will be consideration, of course, as there always is, on investment. Well, I tell you what has got a very low rate of return. A very low rate of return. That is the investment made in knocking off the member for Farrer and putting this bloke in.
We give the call to member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Following the tragic...
No, we're going to do this properly. The same rules will apply to both sides. The member for Lingiari is going to be shown the same respect as I've shown as members on my left. The member will begin her question again. Order. Order. We're going to reset. Members are entitled to be heard in silence. That's for everyone. The Leader of the Opposition, we're just going to reset all members so we can hear out of respect to the member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, following the tragic death of Kumajai little baby in my community of Mbatwa in Alice Springs, how is the Parliament and the Government standing in solidarity with the family and our community at this sad time during business?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Lingiari for her question and for her leadership, along with the Minister for Indigenous Australians, on what is an extraordinarily difficult period. On behalf of the Government and the Parliament, I extend my deepest condolences to the family of Kumajai little baby. They are trying to bear what must be unbearable. Amid their devastation, they have asked for the space to allow sorry business to occur so the memory of their beautiful child can be cherished and honoured. Kumajai little baby was just 5 years old, a bright young soul who loved the world in the joyful, curious, uncomplicated way that 5-year-olds do. She loved puppies and Bluey and the colour pink. She loved going to kindy and she loved her family because they so profoundly and deeply loved her. Our hearts go out to the community in Alice Springs. Over days, hundreds of people, volunteers from all walks of life, joined law enforcement in their search for Kumajai little baby in a spirit of unity. They now come together in their grief. Mr Speaker, this tragedy has shattered a family and shaken a community. We know that amidst the pain there is also anger, and that is understandable. The simple truth is that all governments of all persuasions over generations have not done enough to deal with what are generational challenges, because every Australian child has the right to grow up safe and loved, with the security of a roof over their head, with the opportunity of a great education, to be empowered to make the most of their potential and their life. Kumanjaya, little baby, deserved all of that. For all those around the nation devastated by her loss, we look to the words of her mum, who has asked all Australians to, and I quote her, "Look up to the night sky and find the brightest star where Kumanjaya, little baby, is now in heaven." Together, let us reflect on that wish as we mourn the loss of a bright young life in an extraordinarily sad tragedy.
Call to the honourable member for Indi.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care. Leslie and Bernice from Wodonga in my electorate are 90 and 85. They've been approved for home support services but have been told it will take at least 9 months for the funding to come through. Pamela and her husband from Alexandra have been trying to access home supports since 2024. They're in their 80s. I've written to you about all of them. Minister, are these delays acceptable? And if not, how will you fix them?
Call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Indi for her question. I acknowledge that she engages very regularly and very constructively with me about ensuring that older people in her community can access the very best aged care services, and I appreciate that engagement very much. I'm aware of the correspondence that she has provided to me and my office, some of which we have discussed. As we know, demand for aged care services has increased extraordinarily rapidly with an ageing population. Today, we have more than 350,000 Australians receiving care under our Support at Home program. That's more than double the number of places compared to the home care packages program that it replaced just 5 years ago. We also have 830,000 Australians receiving care under the Commonwealth Home Support program. We are in the process of finalising the allocation of an additional 83,000 support at home places this financial year to help with wait times and to get more Australians, such as those that the member's question refers to, the care that they need. And these extra allocations are taking pressure off the national priority system and making sure that more people are getting the compassionate and dignified care that they need faster. Mr Speaker, it's worth the House understanding that 99% of the people, more broadly, that are on the national priority system are already eligible for some form of home support while they wait for their approved level package, and that every single person assessed as urgent priority is allocated their full funding within a single month. On the 31st of December 2025, the wait list under the Support at Home program was 94,963 people. That was a drop of more than 25,000 people from the 30th of September 2025. Mr Speaker, older Australians do deserve a system that works for them, and this government is getting on with building one. This evening's budget will be one that proves this Labor government's commitment to continuously investing to build an aged care system that Australians can be proud of. We've already announced our commitment to remove co-contributions for personal care services such as showering, dressing and continence care, and we've stepped out the foundations of our plan to make residential care sustainable, affordable and prepared to keep up with the demands of an ageing population. Mr Speaker, our government is working tremendously hard and with great focus on ensuring that every Australian across our community can get the aged care services that they require. And I'm more than happy to continue to meet and discuss those issues in your local community, or rather in the members' local community, and work to resolve those for the people that you've spoken about today.
Call to the honourable member for Solomon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. What action is the Albanese Labor government taking to protect Australians and to support the quarantine of passengers that have been affected by the hantavirus outbreak?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and to the member for Solomon. I know how proud he is of his beautiful community in the top end in the Northern Territory, but I also know how particularly proud he is of the National Critical Care and Trauma Response Centre that has been headquartered in Darwin for almost a quarter of a century. Most recently, he's talked with pride about their deployment of a field hospital to East Katherine to help that community during the recent floods. Just one example of almost 25 years of service from those terrific personnel, and Mr Speaker, we'll be relying on their services to help deal with the hantavirus outbreak as well. Hantavirus is a very, very rare virus for humans, and even rarer still is the transmission from human to human. But where it does happen, we know it can be a very serious, even deadly disease. There has, as I think all members of the House understand, been an outbreak of this virus on a cruise ship, Hondius, in the Northern Hemisphere. There have been 5 Australians, 4 Australian citizens and 1 permanent resident, as well as a New Zealander impacted by that outbreak as passengers on the cruise ship. Yesterday, I reported there had been 8 reported cases of this from cruise ship passengers and 3 deaths. Very sadly, overnight that number has increased, and there has been a report of a French national being hospitalised after returning to France and is currently in a critical condition, Mr Speaker. Now, those 5 Australians and that New Zealander are in the process of being repatriated to Australia overnight. They were flown from Tenerife to the Netherlands. They are in good health. They are being kept informed about the arrangements that we are putting in place, and Foreign Affairs is in the process of finalising a flight to repatriate them to Australia. Now, our government, Mr Speaker, has a very clear view that quarantine arrangements for people arriving in Australia are a national responsibility, not something to be left potentially to different state governments putting in place different arrangements across state borders. So these travellers will be subject to arrangements that have been determined by our government, Mr Speaker. Now, hantavirus over the last 24 hours has been listed as a human disease under the Biosecurity Act, which means it can now be subject to quarantine orders that will be made. These passengers will be flown into RAF Base Pearce, northeast of Perth, and they will be immediately transferred to the National Resilience Centre or Quarantine Centre at Bullsbrook, which is effectively next door, and will be staffed by staff from the NCC TRC deployed from Darwin, Mr Speaker. They will be quarantined there for 3 weeks, which is the strongest quarantine arrangement by any government that is receiving repatriated passengers from this cruise ship. And after those 3 weeks, we'll be taking further advice from public health officials, Mr Speaker.
To the honourable member for Monash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. Does the Minister stand by her declaration to the independent inquiry into her travel that on the evening of Saturday the 7th of June last year, she held an official ministerial meeting with South Australian Labor Minister Chris Picton at Mrs Picton's 40th birthday party, which was held at a live music venue?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, I stand by everything that I have said to the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority. They have reviewed all the documents that I have contributed on that matter. I also note Minister Picton has confirmed that series of events in a series of media outlets. Thank you.
Call to the honourable member for McNamara.
Well, thank you, thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. Can the Attorney-General please update the House on the work of the Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion, including its recently published interim report?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. I acknowledge this issue is one that is deeply personal to him and to others in this place. We will never forget that on the 14th of December last year, the deadliest terrorist attack on Australian soil occurred, taking the lives of 15 innocent people and wounding dozens more. This must never happen again. It was an attack not only on Jewish Australians, but on all Australians. And people in this country should not feel unsafe simply because of their identity. Mr. Speaker, in the aftermath of this horrific attack, the government acted to address abhorrent incidents of hatred and ensure that our laws are effective against evolving threats. And on the 8th of January, the government also established the Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion, led by former High Court Justice, the Honourable Virginia Bell. This Royal Commission, Mr. Speaker, is an important opportunity for Australians, particularly Jewish Australians, to have their voices heard. Mr. Speaker, I've been moved by the evidence given by individuals since the hearings commenced on the 4th of May, and I'm heartened to hear of the safe and respectful environment the Commission has enabled for its witnesses. Appearing before a Royal Commission and sharing these deeply personal, often confronting experiences is significant, and we should acknowledge that as a Parliament. And I'm sure I speak for all members in this place when I thank those who've shown such bravery in appearing before the Commission, and note that more than 10,000 submissions have been made so far. I continue to encourage members of the public with experience or knowledge relevant to the Royal Commission to make a submission and to follow the proceedings. On the 30th of April, the Royal Commission delivered its interim report, which has been widely welcomed by peak Jewish groups, including the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies and the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. While Commissioner Bell found no gaps in existing legal or regulatory frameworks impeded the ability of law enforcement and security agencies to prevent or respond to the Bondi attack, the Commission did make 14 recommendations, including with respect to enhancing our national counter-terrorism arrangements and capabilities. The Government will adopt and implement all recommendations of the interim report as they relate to the Commonwealth. I thank Commissioner Bell and the Royal Commission for its work to date, and note that a final report will be delivered by the 14th of December. As the Prime Minister has said, this Royal Commission is not the start or the end of what Australia must do to eradicate anti-Semitism. We'll continue to support the work of our Special Envoy for combating anti-Semitism, Gillian Segal, and work with states and territories to implement Australia's counter-terrorism and violent extremism strategy. We've taken action against hate crimes and we're delivering tougher gun laws. This Royal Commission strengthens our collective actions to help keep all Australians safe and ensure this tragedy never happens again.
Give a call to the honourable member for New England.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. The Minister has claimed that there is a $31 billion blowout in the cost of the construction of the Inland Rail. To give confidence to the validity of these numbers, as it seems rather incredible, can the Minister nominate the 5 largest cost items and the amount that is associated with them that is part of the $31 billion amount? And if you can't nominate one of the 5 largest ones, can you nominate one and the cost item that is associated with it?
Call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Well, I can nominate who's responsible for this debacle of a project, and that might be the person who asked me this question and some of his National Party colleagues. The Inland Rail, frankly, is an absolute and utter perfect example of why the National Party and their One Nation colleagues should never, ever, ever again be allowed near the Treasury coffers. This is the worst project in the country in the way in which it was developed. And I'm going to talk you through this. In 2013, we provisioned $1 billion to do the planning work for Inland Rail, the planning work. It was never done. The government went out and announced a $9 billion program for Inland Rail, funded by debt, not funded off cash balance, but funded off debt, to build Inland Rail without any planning, without any idea about how it was going to get into the Port of Melbourne or into the Port of Brisbane. No idea about that at all. Instead, they announced $9.3 billion to fund the whole thing. I'm giving you a history lesson here.
The Minister will pause. The member for New England on a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Look, I think I've been very fair. I've asked her to nominate items that make up its make up the $31 billion? We haven't heard one as yet. I even offered that she just nominate one item and the amount that's associated with it. So most definitely on relevance. If we can't be relevant, can you please ask the Minister to sit down?
Order. I'm going to ask the Minister to be directly relevant about the claims of the construction blowouts on the inland coast. She was asked specifics regarding that. So far she's explaining to the House about the costs that have been incurred. So she does have another 1 minute 40 to get to the rest of the question, so I'll make sure she is being directly relevant, but she's giving cost breakdowns already. I don't know, I'm sure where she's going, but I'll listen carefully.
And by 2020, the cost estimate had then risen to $16.4 billion, again funded from debt. Of course, when we came to office in 2022, we inherited this project. And the first thing that I was told by the Australian Rail Track Corporation, who all of the figures come from, the ARTC, we were told that the project would need substantially more funding to finish it, but the ARTC could not tell us how much. They did not know. They did not know how much it would cost. So we commissioned an independent expert to review the project, and Dr Schott, when she released her review and the figures were based on those from the ARTC itself, she said it looked like it was going to cost an additional $31.4 billion, but she couldn't be sure. So what we did is we then got ARTC and then Inland Rail, having accepted all of those recommendations, to have a look at it again. And they then said to us very clearly that it is now a $45 billion project, Now, the summary of the ACIL Allen work, if you care to go and have a look, is on my department's website, and it will show to you that all of the ARTC estimates say that it is now a $45 billion project. Now, frankly, every single one of the people who've been involved in this project should hang their heads in shame. It is a project that, frankly, we will now get to Parks, which will see us begin to get a return finally on our investment. We will never get the money back for Inland Rail. And frankly, as I'd say in Victoria, you've got more front than Myers to ask that question.
Give the call to the honourable member for Dixon.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government making it easier for Australians to see a doctor when they need urgent care? How are urgent care clinics helping to strengthen Medicare after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, you could not find a better advocate for Medicare than the member for Dixon, Mr Speaker. She understands better than most just how important a high-quality universal health insurance system is for Australia and its people, and that's why she campaigned so hard for more bulk billing, for more doctors and nurses, for cheaper medicines, and of course for more urgent care options, Mr Speaker. And last week, yet again, she hosted the Prime Minister at the Murrumba Downs Medicare Urgent Care Clinic, Mr Speaker. He loves it up there. I'm not quite sure how many times he's been. It's a lot, 3 times, Mr Speaker. And what's not to love? This is a general practice, a big general practice, busy general practice that since our investment on the 1st of November is now 100% bulk billing, Mr Speaker. And it's co-located with this terrific urgent care clinic, which has now seen almost 35,000 patients from the member for Dixon's community, taking pressure off the emergency department at the Redcliffe Hospital, delivering really high-quality urgent care. And of course, Mr Speaker, I go to Google Review to just get some sense of that quality service people are getting. Sam, for example, said that he came here, that's the Murrumba Downs, after waiting for help in the emergency room for more than 4 hours, either Redcliffe or Caboolture, I suspect, and he was seen and taken care of at this urgent care clinic. The staff are lovely, the doctor was amazing and made me feel comfortable the whole time, and he'd recommend it 100%, Mr Speaker. This is just one of 135 Medicare urgent care clinics that are now open and operating, Mr Speaker. 2 more will be open in coming weeks, Caloundra and the Sunshine Coast, and Darwin's due to open in the next couple of weeks, Mr Speaker, rounding out our network of 137. They've already seen about 3 million Australian patients, and when they're fully up and running, they'll see 2 million a year, half of whom tell us would otherwise have gone to the local hospital emergency departments. So taking that pressure off our busy hospital system. They're open 7 days a week. They're available extended hours. They're seeing lots of kids who are suffering sports injuries or getting sick quickly. And importantly for us, Mr Speaker, they are fully bulk billed. Now, this is still a new model for Australia, Mr Speaker. After we introduced it, it's only been up and running 3 years, Mr Speaker, but we know it is making a huge difference to patients and to our hospital system. And that's why the budget delivered tonight locks in urgent care as part of Australia's Medicare system forever, Mr Speaker. As the Prime Minister has said, $1.8 billion over 5 years to lock this thing into our Medicare system. Just another investment in our commitment to deliver a stronger Medicare.
Time has concluded. Give the call to the honourable member for Monash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. I refer to your previous answer. Were any ministerial staff or departmental officials present at the meeting, and were any notes taken?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for her question. This has been the subject of a full audit of the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority. I voluntarily referred myself to IPIA to review all of my travel across 22 to 25. IPIA reviewed nearly 2,000 line items and 243 different trips during that time. During this trip, IPIA has deemed this trip to be the dominant purpose for parliamentary purposes. It encompassed 4 different matters across 2 days, a announcement of sporting schools funding, and 3 other appointments across the 2 days. IPIA has viewed this to be entirely within the rules, and if you have further questions, I can refer you to the report, which is publicly available and 256 pages long. Thank you.
Order. The member for McEwen is warned. Order. Call to the honourable member for Boothby.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering meaningful action on gambling harm? Why are these reforms important?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Boothby for her question and for her and other caucus members who worked tirelessly on this issue over a long period of time. At the National Press Club in April, I announced that we'll build on the reforms we've already delivered to combat gambling harm, working to 1. Minimise children's exposure to wagering advertising, 2. Break the connection between wagering and sport, and 3. Reduce the saturation and targeted nature of wagering advertising. This package forms our response to the Social Policy and Legal Affairs Committee inquiry into this issue, which will be tabled later today. These reforms get the balance right, so children don't grow up thinking sport and gambling are inextricably linked, but letting adults have a punt if they want to. Our changes will empower all Australians to opt out of all gambling advertising on all streaming services and digital platforms. They will ban all gambling ads during live sports broadcasts between 6 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. and ban all gambling ads on radio during school pick-up and drop-off time. Celebrities and sports players will not be able to appear in gambling ads and will ban the use of odd-style ads that target sporting fans. Gambling ads in sports venues and on players' jumpers and uniforms will be banned. And we're cracking down on online lotteries products and banning online Keno pocket pokies. We will make match fixing a criminal offence across Australia and boost enforcement against illegal offshore gambling providers. We will strengthen BetStop further, expand financial counselling support and increase public awareness of online gambling harms. These build on our previous reforms They will make a meaningful difference, and I encourage all members of the Parliament to support them. And on that notice, Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
Before members leave the House, I have a statement to make about proceedings for the budget.
That's the end of question time in the House of Representatives. Now, as expected, a lot of the focus was on this evening's budget that's set to be handed down by Treasurer Jim Chalmers. But for people like me who are expecting that they might get a sneak peek about what's to come, well, we're going to have to wait until this evening for more details about changes to negative gearing and to capital gains tax. The opposition, as expected, targeted lots of their questions around a broken promise, given how often Anthony Albanese has said that he won't tinker with either of those twin policies. He didn't answer, though, a lot of those questions, pushing back, pointing out all the times that the opposition has been open to considering different things other than supply as an answer to the housing crisis. We'll wait and see this evening exactly what the meat on the bone is going to be there, but the government was eager to talk about things that they've confirmed already were in the budget, like a fuel supply package, tax deduction, those kind of things. And question time ended with the government talking about what it's going to do next, which is hand down a report into the review conducted by, or chaired by, late MP Peter Murphy into gambling harm. We'd already heard a little bit from the government about their approach to this, going from Health Minister Mark Butler, but we will see that very shortly and see exactly what that's going to contain. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, as you just heard, said that it's going to strike the right balance, and we'll wait and see exactly what people say about it going forward.
Yes, lots more to come. Adam, thanks very much for the wrap-up.